My name is Michael Nzioka, and in the field of theory of knowledge, I will be presenting today question number 3, which says that Western epistemology has been unnecessarily concerned with proportional knowledge, leading to what can be regarded as the operating of proportional knowledge. Critically discuss this statement in relationship to traditional knowledge. And the flow of my presentation will be as follows. First will be the definition of Western epistemology. Second will be the elaboration of the two main branches of epistemology. And the third will be the definition of the proportional knowledge. And the third will be definition of traditional knowledge. And the fifth will be discussion about the relationships between epistemology and the traditional knowledge. So the word epistemology is derived from the Greek culture, from two Greek words that means episteme and logos. Episteme meaning knowledge and logos meaning reason. Therefore, epistemology is a study of knowledge. Branches of the epistemology. Epistemology, being one of the main sources of philosophy, is divided into two branches, that is empiricism and rationalism. Empiricism is the theory that all knowledge is based on experience derived from the senses, stimulated by the rise of experimental science. It was developed between 17th century and 18th centuries. It was expounded by John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume. Locke holds that the mind is a tabula rasa or blank sheet until experience in the form of sensation and reflection provide the basic material, simple ideas, out of which most of our more complex knowledge is constructed. So, proportional knowledge. This knowledge is knowledge according to the traditional definition is belief of a special kind, belief that satisfies two necessary conditions: the truth of what is believed and the justification of what is believed. For example, if Jim knows that Jesse is a musician, he knows knowledge of the proposition that Jesse is a musician. For centuries upon centuries, philosophers accepted Plato's theory of knowledge, the view that knowledge is justified through belief. And this view is also known as the JTB theory, justified through theory. Here is the official statement of justified through belief theory, that S knows that P if only S believes that P, and P is true, and S is justified in believing that P. Even if we accept the justified true belief theory, there is still a lot of work to be done in epistemology. And the one major question needing attention is this: what is the nature of the epistemic justification? That is, what exactly does clause? An attempted answer to this question is called a theory of justification, a statement of this form. Even if justified true belief theory, we cannot really know the nature of knowledge until we also have a theory of justification. Uh, Once we come to the second point of empiricism, epistemology, the second branch of epistemology, which is rationalism, French philosopher René Descartes, who wrote, "I think, there I am," is considered the father of rationalism. He believed that eternal truths can only be discovered and tested through reason, and the theory that the exercise of reason rather than experience, authority, or spiritual revelation provides the primary basic of knowledge. Rationalism is the view that reasoning by itself is a source of knowledge or proof. Rationalist philosophers believe that all knowledge can be understood through a process of reasoning without any external source. Traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge can be defined as knowledge or practices passed down from generation to generation that form part of traditions or heritage of indigenous communities. Knowledge or practices for which indigenous communities act as the guardians or custodians. Traditional knowledge is knowledge, know-how, skills and practices that are developed, sustained, and passed on from generation to generation within community after forming part of its cultural or spiritual identity. The type of knowledge that is considered within this scope includes the knowledge about the medicine properties or effects of flora and fauna, knowledge about hunting or fishing techniques. To explain more further about traditional knowledge refers to knowledge or practices passed down from generation to generation that form part of traditional or heritage of indigenous communities. Knowledge or practices for which indigenous communities act as the guardians or custodians. And the type of knowledge that is considered within this scope includes knowledge about the medicine, as I have already explained in the previous slide, properties or effects of flora and fauna, knowledge about hunting or fishing techniques. And this knowledge, as I have said them before, it was just passed on from one generation to another through mouth or from parents to children or from leaders of the community to the young generations, or from the seers or the prophets to the young generation. And it was passed orally, it was not recorded like what we have in Western epistemology, whereby everything was recorded all the way from the true philosophers, Thales, to the current philosophers, 20th philosophers, who came up with logical positivism. So, what is meant by indigenous cultural expression? We may ask ourselves that question. Indigenous cultural expression refers to ways in which indigenous communities express their traditional culture, ways that are part of their heritage or identity, ways that are passed down from generation to generation. Indigenous cultural expressions might, for example, take the form of songs, stories, dances, art and designs, craft, etc. And who owns traditional knowledge and indigenous cultural expressions? We might ask ourselves that other question also. And we will find that communities, individuals, societies, they are the ones that own that traditional knowledge. And it is not meant to be passed from one community to another. So if one community has an idea of knowledge, like knowledge about the snake bite medicine, it won't be able to pass it to the other community, because it's like a key element for it to survive. So it will use that knowledge to earn its living from the other cultures. It will exercise its knowledge to the other cultures so that it may earn living. And that's one of the problem of traditional knowledge, whereby it was not passed from, it was not written down. And since it was not written down, we can't study it. It has no intellectual values. So we cannot go to school to study about that kind of traditional knowledge, but it can be based only on cultures. And the traditional knowledge lacked intellectual skills, as I have said. So it's not taught in school. And one of the major reasons why it is not taught in school is that it is not recorded. What I know is what I know. If I'm a traditionalist, and I will use that knowledge and I will pass it to my children, and they will continue earning living through that knowledge. If I have knowledge to prophesy, or if I have knowledge, farming skills, yes, farming skills, I will continue passing it on to my children, so that they will continue to be famous, maybe within the territory where I am, and I will be known for that kind of knowledge. If I am good in hunting, I'll pass my hunting skills to my children, and they will be known in the entire place where I am because of that hunting. And therefore, that skills is not passed from one generation, it's not passed from one community to another, but is retained within the community, or it is retained within the family. And that's why it is not recorded down, because if you record it down, you'll link it to another community, and they will use that kind of knowledge also to earn their living. Yes. And as I summarize about the traditional knowledge, I'd like to repeat these 4 examples of them, like farming skills, artistic work, or spiritual belief, or medicine, is not recorded anywhere, and it can only be passed from one generation to another. There are challenges that this traditional knowledge encounter daily. One of it is when there is an outbreak of new tradition of when there's an outbreak of, like what we have current coronavirus, the traditional knowledge cannot be used to treat this virus. So people have to bind themselves with science and find what is the cause of this and that, and make some medicine concerning that. So that is one of the big challenge of traditional knowledge. The herbs cannot be able to work. Herbs can work well to treat a snake bite, but once we come to the current outbreaks of viruses and diseases, traditional knowledge cannot be able to treat. The second one, it is communal. What one has is for the benefit of the community. That knowledge may not be globally. So as I explained there before, it's only owned by the community, and it is not explained globally. For example, if we have, I will keep on using the snake bite. If snake bite, snake venom medicine, if I have it and I give it to the entire world, it means that people will be using just that medicine to cure the snake bite, and they will never go to the hospital. And my family that own that skill or that kind of knowledge, it will lose market, and it will not earn the living. That's why some of the community, they tend to maintain their knowledge, or some of the society of the families, all the families. Okay, the third one is believers must know there are multiplicity of cultures in the globe, and therefore traditional knowledge could have grown to adapt the global community, but not particular to a certain community. So since the population has grown, we are not now no longer living in the bushes. So this traditional knowledge can be made public for all cultures to be able to benefit from it. And the fourth problem is that yet another problem confronting traditional knowledge orders is the commercial exploitation of their knowledge by others, which raises a question of legal protection of traditional knowledge against misuse, the role of prior informed consent, and the need for the equitable benefit sharing. I think it's a kind of, they normally try to prevent it from being passed from one generation to another, because they also fear the abuse of it. Because if I pass my knowledge to another person, it will be abused. Like once we turn to tradition to epistemology knowledge, it was commonly known by Plato and Aristotle through empiricism and rationalism. But it comes now to 20th century, it has been challenged, and therefore it now the value of the knowledge that was based on Plato and Aristotle, and which has been known for many years, it is getting challenged. So in the other hand, also the traditional knowledge, they fear also misuse of that knowledge. And that's why they hold it from passing it from one generation, from one community to another, or from one family to another. And therefore, on the other hand, we are going to see now the differences between epistemology and traditional knowledge. And from point of view, I have only highlighted three main differences. One of the first differences is from the place of origin and how we receive the knowledge. And we see the epistemology originated from Greeks, and a source of knowledge is through empiricism or rationalism, while traditional knowledge spans from one generation to the next. The second difference is the divination. We can define the rational knowledge through justified true belief, while we cannot define the traditional knowledge because each community has a particular knowledge. So we cannot define traditional knowledge. Yes. And the third point that I raise about the difference of epistemology and the traditional knowledge is that traditional knowledge has remained unchanged for a long period, even today. While with the advancement of science, the whole epistemological knowledge has changed. People are using technology instruments to be able to advance in knowledge today, like using of uh, telescope that was made by Galileo in the 16th century to see the moons of Jupiter and the other heavenly bodies. And therefore, those are the three differences concerning epistemology and traditional knowledge. And now, in my conclusion, I have to conclude that indigenous knowledge includes the knowledge that is developed by indigenous people in a community or in a local society. And this knowledge is passed formally or informally through all the culture, traditions, ritual practices, interaction with the natural environment, etc. It is key for sustainable development. Indigenous belief, customs, and practices may vary also according to time. And this is the main disadvantage of indigenous knowledge, because from time to time, the indigenous knowledge or traditional knowledge has remained the same. Sometimes the knowledge of indigenous people be wrong when comparing with scientific knowledge. And also knowledge sharpens our skills like reasoning and problem solving. And a strong base of knowledge helps brain function more smoothly and effectively. And we become smarter with the power of knowledge and solve problems more easily. And everyday life, knowledge is important and useful in a day-to-day events. And regarding to the question, Western epistemology has been unnecessarily concerned with the proportional knowledge, leading to what can be regarded as the overrating of proportional knowledge because of the following. Number one, advanced technology. Number two, it is not bound by cultures. Number three, is based on true justified belief. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and may God bless you.